The landscape of contemporary culture is rarely shaken by a single literary event in a way that alters the collective social discourse overnight, yet every few decades. A narrative emerges that forces the public to reconsider everything they thought they knew about institutions seemingly set in stone. For centuries, the inner workings of the world's most famous families have been shielded behind a wall of carefully curated public relations, strategic silence, and an unspoken agreement that the private lives of those born into extreme privilege should remain entirely opaque. The public consumes the imagery of grand processions, flawless ceremonies, and structured public appearances, naturally assuming that the reality matches the gilded surface presented to the world. However, beneath the immaculate uniforms, the historic stone walls, and the centuries of tradition lies a deeply human experience that is often far more turbulent, isolating, and harrowing than any outsider could possibly fathom. When that veil is suddenly and decisively torn away, the resulting impact reverberates far beyond the pages of a book, shifting from a mere media sensation into a profound exploration of identity, trauma, and the staggering cost of an institutional existence. If you have glanced at a single headline or scrolled through any major media feed over the course of the recent months, you have undoubtedly encountered the waves made by a singular, deeply polarizing biography that has completely dominated global conversation. It did not merely enter the literary market, it exploded onto the scene, rapidly rocketing to the absolute peak of virtually every major bestseller list across the globe the very moment its release was made official. The unprecedented demand for this narrative was entirely justified, driven by a collective fascination with an individual who possesses a perspective that is fundamentally unique in the modern era. We are talking about a viewpoint forged in the crucible of a highly unconventional, often deeply distressing childhood spent under the relentless, unblinking glare of the international spotlight, where every developmental milestone, personal tragedy, and private vulnerability was immediately commodified for mass consumption. This narrative represents a historic departure from the traditional code of silence, offering an unprecedented look at what happens when a person decided to reclaim their own history from the machinery that sought to define them. Before we delve deeper into the intricate layers of this unprecedented cultural phenomenon and examine the specific raw revelations that have captivated millions of minds worldwide, take a quick moment to subscribe to this channel so you never miss our in-depth investigative reports, detailed analyses, and comprehensive breakdowns of the defining events shaping our modern world. The fascination with this autobiography lies not just in the high-profile nature of its author, but in the specific, raw, and completely unflinching honesty with which the text handles themes that are universally human, yet amplified to an agonizing degree by the circumstances of royal birth. It chronicles the devastating, enduring impact of profound grief experienced at a tender, highly vulnerable age, a loss that was compounded by the fact that it had to be mourned in full view of a global audience numbering in the hundreds of millions. The narrative meticulously deconstructs the psychological toll of constant aggressive media surveillance, where the boundary between public service and private existence was entirely erased, leaving no safe haven for a developing mind. It explores the complex dynamics of entering adulthood, the transformative experience of marriage, and the ultimate realization that the very institution designed to protect its members can often function as an overwhelming claustrophobic force that demands the total sublimation of individuality. Amidst these deeply heavy, emotionally taxing revelations, the text also weaves in numerous lighter, surprisingly candid moments that have quickly become cultural touchstones across the internet, showcasing a relatable humanity that stands in stark contrast to the rigid formality typically associated with such a background. It is precisely this potent mixture of deep vulnerability and unexpected relatability that explains why readers and critics alike have rated the work so exceptionally high, recognizing it as a landmark piece of autobiographical storytelling. Although a significant amount of time has elapsed since the initial explosive release of this biography, its relevance has not waned in the slightest, continuing to serve as a central point of reference in discussions about media ethics, institutional pressure, and personal autonomy. For many observers, however, the desire to engage with this monumental text has been continuously tempered by the purely practical hesitation of committing to the financial cost of purchasing a premium hardback biography during uncertain economic times. This financial barrier has left a vast segment of the public on the periphery of one of the most significant cultural conversations of our generation, wanting to understand the nuances of the narrative but waiting for an accessible opportunity to do so. Fortunately, that long-awaited opportunity has finally materialized, allowing anyone who has held off until now to fully catch up on the most talked-about book of the decade without spending a single penny. This window of accessibility is made possible through a strategic utilization of modern digital audio platforms, specifically through the acquisition of an Audible free trial, which grants immediate access to the complete, unabridged audiobook version of this historic text. Listening to the narrative adds an entirely new, profoundly intimate dimension to the experience, as the entire biography is read aloud by the author himself, allowing the audience to hear the precise inflections, the genuine emotional weight, and the authentic cadence of a story told directly by the person who lived it. For individuals navigating this platform as non-Prime members, the trial structure is remarkably generous, offering one complete audiobook that remains yours to keep permanently in your digital library, regardless of whether you choose to maintain the subscription or cancel it before any charges occur. For those who already possess a Prime membership, the benefits are doubled, allowing you to secure 2 distinct audiobooks right from the start, providing an exceptionally compelling incentive to explore the digital service. Furthermore, should you decide that the platform provides continuous value and choose to remain a subscriber beyond the trial period for the standard monthly fee, you will unlock a continuous stream of monthly literature selections alongside unrestricted access to an extensive expanded catalogue. There is truly no logical reason to delay engaging with this defining piece of contemporary history when the barrier to entry has been entirely removed. Spending absolutely nothing to gain complete, unfiltered access to one of the biggest and most impactful conversation topics of the modern era is an opportunity that simply shouldn't be overlooked by anyone wishing to truly understand the forces shaping today's cultural landscape. The moment the public truly began to grasp the sheer scale of what this biography represented, the initial media frenzy transformed into a deep, often uncomfortable examination of the machinery that governs public life. To fully appreciate the tension that builds throughout the narrative, one must understand the environment into which Prince Harry was born, an environment where personal identity is systematically subordinate to institutional duty from the literal moment of conception. The book meticulously details a childhood that, while superficially filled with unimaginable luxury, palatial estates, and endless security, was structurally defined by a profound sense of isolation and an acute awareness of an established hierarchy. This hierarchy was not merely an abstract concept. It was a daily, lived reality that dictated everything from the size of a bedroom to the allocation of attention and resources within the family dynamic. The title of the work itself serves as a stark, uncompromising indictment of this systemic devaluation, referencing a cruel linguistic tradition that labels a younger sibling as merely a biological insurance policy. An afterthought whose primary purpose is to provide spare parts or structural security should tragedy befall the primary heir. This realization, according to the narrative, creates a psychological framework that colors every interaction, every relationship, and every attempt to establish a sense of self-worth outside of a predetermined institutional matrix. As the chapters unfold, the atmosphere grows increasingly claustrophobic, tracing the transition from a bewildered child into a deeply conflicted young man searching for purpose within a system that demanded absolute conformity. The tension escalates dramatically as the text navigates the author's military career, a period often romanticized by the media, but presented here with a gritty, unvarnished realism that emphasizes both the desperate desire for a normal, merit-based environment and the harrowing psychological consequences of modern warfare. In the military, the prince found a temporary sanctuary where rank was earned through competence rather than birthright. Yet even this sanctuary was constantly compromised by his global visibility, making him a high-value target and forcing complex security arrangements that further isolated him from his peers. The narrative does not shy away from the brutal realities of combat, describing the visceral impact of loss, the adrenaline of operational deployment, and the subsequent difficult adjustment back to a civilian life that felt increasingly superficial and restrictive. Upon returning to the full-time execution of official duties, the friction between personal authenticity and institutional expectation reached a breaking point, exacerbated by an aggressive, predatory tabloid press that operated with a chilling degree of impunity. The book exposes the hidden mechanics of modern media relations, describing a toxic, symbiotic ecosystem where private information was routinely commodified, traded, and leaked by various factions within the institutional apparatus to secure favorable coverage or protect specific individuals at the expense of others. This constant, systemic betrayal created an environment of pervasive paranoia, where the author felt increasingly unable to trust even those within his closest circle, leading to a profound sense of psychological entrapment. The entrance of Meghan Markle into this volatile equation acted as both a profound catalyst for personal awakening and the ultimate flashpoint for the institutional crisis that followed. The narrative captures the early, idyllic days of their courtship, a brief period of stolen privacy that stood in sharp contrast to the storm that was gathering on the horizon. The moment their relationship became public knowledge, the media onslaught intensified to an unprecedented degree, combining traditional tabloid sensationalism with a distinctly modern, virulent wave of online hostility that quickly took on deeply troubling cultural overtones. The book layout provides a visceral, step-by-step account of the escalating hostility, documenting the lack of institutional support, the refusal to intervene or adapt protective protocols, and the growing realization that history was tragically repeating itself in the most terrifying way possible. The tension during this period becomes almost palpable as the author describes the sleepless nights, the constant security threats, and the devastating impact of this relentless campaign on his wife's mental health and well-being. It was within this crucible of pressure, isolation, and profound fear for his family's safety that the decision to break away from the established order began to solidify from a distant, unthinkable fantasy into an absolute, non-negotiable necessity for survival. The culmination of this section of the biography details the frantic, highly charged negotiations that preceded their departure, a period marked by sharp disagreements, fractured relationships, and a total breakdown of communication between parties who had once been inseparable. This was not a calculated, strategic move for financial gain, as it was often portrayed by detractors, but rather a desperate, high-stakes escape from a situation that had become entirely untenable and hazardous to human life. The narrative conveys the immense emotional weight of walking away from the only world he had ever known, relinquishing military titles that had been earned through genuine sacrifice, and stepping into an uncertain, highly scrutinized future without the institutional safety net that had defined his entire existence. By laying bare these internal dynamics, the text forces the audience to confront the dark underbelly of a system that thrives on the erasure of individual agency, leaving viewers gripped by the raw emotional stakes of a man fighting to protect his family from the very forces that had shaped and fractured his own life since childhood. The profound significance of this autobiographical account extends far beyond the immediate boundaries of a familial dispute, serving as a powerful lens through which the global audience can examine the intricate mechanics of historic power structures and their human cost. To fully comprehend why this narrative matters so deeply in the contemporary landscape, it is essential to look closely at the central figures who animate these pages, understanding their backgrounds, their trajectories, and the broader historical context that shaped their actions. At the heart of this narrative is Prince Harry, born in September 1984 as the younger son of King Charles III and the late Diana, Princess of Wales. His early life was defined by a profound duality, existing simultaneously as a symbol of an ancient lineage and as the son of a mother who actively sought to expose her children to the realities of the wider world outside palace walls. The tragic, untimely passing of Princess Diana in August 1997 in Paris, following a relentless high-speed pursuit by paparazzi, serves as the defining trauma of his life, an event that permanently altered his relationship with the media and instilled an enduring, deep-seated distrust of the press. This profound loss occurred when he was just 12 years old, forcing him to grieve under the intense scrutiny of a global audience, an experience that left deep psychological scars that would take decades to fully confront and process. His path eventually led him to the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst, marking the beginning of a decade-long military career that included 2 operational tours of duty in Afghanistan. This period of service was not merely a ceremonial duty, but a genuine commitment, during which he rose to the rank of captain and qualified as an Apache helicopter co-pilot gunner, a role that demanded immense technical skill and emotional resilience under combat conditions. Following his military service, he channeled his experiences into philanthropic endeavors, most notably founding the Invictus Games, an international adaptive sporting event for wounded, injured, and sick servicemen and women, which has achieved widespread global acclaim. His marriage in May 2018 to Meghan Markle, an accomplished American actress who graduated from Northwestern University with a double major in theater and international studies, brought a distinctly modern, self-made perspective into the traditional sphere. Her background as a successful professional who had navigated the competitive entertainment industry, engaged in international humanitarian work with organizations like the United Nations, and maintained an independent public platform created an inevitable clash with an institution that demanded total submission to established protocols. The biography meticulously outlines how these 2 distinct paths converged, creating a partnership that was ultimately deemed incompatible with the rigid framework of the traditional system. The broader context of this historic departure is deeply intertwined with the actions and perspectives of other key participants, including King Charles III and Prince William, the Prince of Wales. King Charles, who ascended to the throne following the passing of Queen Elizabeth II, is portrayed throughout the work as a complex figure caught between his paternal instincts and his immense responsibilities as the head of an ancient institution, often struggling to bridge the emotional divide within his family while maintaining the strict boundaries required by his role. Prince William, the heir to the throne, represents the primary counterweight in the narrative. having chosen a path of absolute alignment with institutional expectations, a choice that created an escalating, heartbreaking friction between the two brothers who had once been bound together by shared tragedy. The book does not present these dynamics in a simplistic adversarial light, but rather as an inevitable consequence of a system that pits its members against one another through the rigid enforcement of a hierarchical birthright. By detailing these complex interpersonal relationships, the narrative sheds a clear light on why this rupture was so deeply impactful, demonstrating that the decision to step back from official duties in January 2020 was the culmination of years of systemic pressure rather than an impulsive act. The aftermath of their transition, often referred to in popular culture as Megxit, saw the couple relocating to North America, eventually establishing a new life in California where they could exercise complete autonomy over their personal and professional endeavors. This move allowed them to launch their own multimedia production company and philanthropic foundation, focusing on mental health advocacy, gender equality, and sustainable media practices. The publication of this biography represents the ultimate reclamation of their own narrative, a deliberate act of speaking truth to power after years of being defined by third-party commentators and unauthorized biographies. The international response to the book's release underscored its profound cultural resonance, sparking intense global debates regarding the role of a free press, the boundaries of personal privacy, the psychological impact of inherited privilege, and the modern relevance of hereditary institutions in a democratic society. It forced media organizations to reflect on their methods and sparked widespread conversations about how society treats public figures, particularly women and individuals from diverse backgrounds who enter traditionally insular spaces. Ultimately, this story matters because it challenges the long-standing myth that absolute wealth and social status insulate a person from fundamental human suffering, demonstrating instead that the need for safety, emotional honesty, and familial protection is a universal human right that transcends any title or crown. It stands as a historic document of a man who chose to dismantle the illusion of perfection in order to achieve personal